Bonjour tout le monde. Hi everyone. Mon nom est Catherine Lévesque. Je suis journaliste pour le National Post et je serai votre modératrice aujourd'hui.
I will be your moderator
So today we have with us the Prime Minister, le très honorable Justin Trudeau. Nous avons aussi la vice-première ministre et ministre des Finances,
Justin Trudeau,
Chrystia Freeland.
Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance,
Privy Council
Chrystia
for
Freeland.
Canada and Minister of Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, Minister of Public Safety, Marco Mendicino, and the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, David Lametti. So Prime Minister Trudeau will make a few remarks and then we will turn to questions. A reminder, it is 20 minutes of questions, 10 in the room and 10 on Zoom. À vous, Monsieur le Premier ministre.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone.
Thank you very much.
Je suis accompagné aujourd'hui de la vice-première ministre
I'm
Freeland
accompanied
et des
today
ministres
by Deputy Prime
Lametti,
Minister
Mendicino
Freeland
et Blair.
and Ministers Lametti, Mendicino, and
These
Blair.
past weeks have been incredibly difficult for the people of our capital city, and they've been stressful and disturbing for all Canadians. The situation is not anything anyone wanted, and quite frankly, not anything we'd want to see again. Lundi dernier, après avoir consulté les
On
provinces et
Monday,
les
after having
territoires,
consulted
le
the
gouvernement
provinces and
fédéral
territories, the
a
federal
invoqué la
government
loi sur les
invoked
mesures
the
d'urgence.
Emergency Measures Act.
Mardi,
Tuesday,
le poste frontalier de
the
Coutts en
Coutts
Alberta
border
a été
crossing in
ouvert.
Alberta was
Et
reopened,
mercredi,
and Wednesday,
le barrage à Emerson,
the blockade in
Manitoba,
Emerson,
a été
Manitoba
levé.
was removed.
Aujourd'hui,
Today,
les familles et
the
les travailleurs
families and
d'Ottawa sont en
workers
voie de
in
retrouver
Ottawa
leur
are
quartier
gaining back their
et leur
neighborhoods
liberté.
and their freedoms.
I want to take a moment to thank the law enforcement agencies from across the country who joined the operations. And I want to continue to thank them as they ensure that, among other things, Canada's border crossings remain open, including in Windsor, and that all communities are safe. We didn't want to use the Emergencies Act. It's never something to turn to without serious consideration. But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close, after billions of dollars were stalled in trade, putting people's jobs and livelihoods at risk, after the National War Memorial was desecrated, after evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country, after a flood of misinformation and disinformation washed over Canada, including from foreign sources, after these illegal blockades and occupations received disturbing amounts of foreign funding to destabilize Canada's democracy, it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe. For the past few days, parliamentarians have been debating the Emergencies Act and will be voting on it tonight. I ask all members of Parliament to take action against illegal blockades and to stand up for public safety and for the freedom of Canadians. Invoking the Emergencies Act has been necessary. Law enforcement agencies relied on it to set up secured areas in downtown Ottawa and at border crossings. It prevented foreign money from continuing to fund illegal blockades, and it's making sure our borders remain open. It has been the responsible thing to do. We now have a choice to make as a society. We can choose to keep reliving these scenes that tear at the values that bind us as Canadians, or we can choose to remember who we are and the best vision of what Canada can be. What we've seen in these past weeks is not the story of this pandemic. The story of this pandemic is one of unity and solidarity. La pandémie, c'est l'histoire des travailleurs de la
The
santé qui se
pandemic is a
présentent
story
chaque
about the
jour au
workers in the
travail,
health
peu
sector
importe leur fatigue et les
who come to work every day,
difficultés qui
regardless
les
of how
attendent.
tired they are or the
C'est
difficulties that
l'histoire
await
des
them. It's the
camionneurs
story
et
of
des
truckers
travailleurs de première
and
ligne
frontline
qui font
workers
tourner notre
who
économie.
keep the economy running.
C'est l'histoire
It's
des
the story
enfants
of
et
children
des aînés
and
qui
seniors
sont restés
who have
forts
remained
et
strong
résilients.
and resilient.
On a vu les gens partout
We've
au
seen
pays
people across the
travailler
country
ensemble
who have been
et
working
s'adapter
together
collectivement
and
pour sauver
adapted
des vies.
together to save lives.
On a les taux de vaccination
We've
parmi les
got
plus
some of the
élevés au
highest
monde.
vaccination rates in the world.
On a tous fait
We've
des
all
sacrifices.
made
Et
sacrifices.
oui, ça a
And
été
yes,
difficile.
it was difficult. The lives of 36,000 Canadians were taken by COVID-19. These were grandparents, parents, children, friends, and neighbors. But throughout it all, we were there for each other.
Through this pain and heartbreak, Canadians answered the call because Canadians are good people. We're among the world leaders in vaccination and health outcomes, as well as in economic recovery and job creation. It took courage. It took resilience. But we did it together. And despite the many challenges that we faced, our democratic institutions remain strong. We don't always agree, and that's okay. In fact, it's not only healthy to have debates in a democracy, it's necessary. Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly. These values are at the core of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. They're at the core of who we are as Canadians. In a democracy, you can protest, you can share your opinion at the top of your lungs. You can disagree with elected officials. You can certainly disagree with me. But you can't harass your fellow citizens who disagree with you. You can't hold a city hostage. You can't block a critical trade corridor and deprive people of their jobs. You can't attack journalists for reporting, which is essential to our democracy. What you can do is vote. What you can do is run for office. That's how change happens in a democracy. On est tous fatigués de la pandémie.
We're all tired of the pandemic, but that doesn't mean you have the right to participate in illegal blockades or occupations or to put others in danger. And it's unacceptable to attack a journalist because they're doing their work or to intimidate people and get in the way of the freedom of the press. There's no doubt that the last weeks have been trying times, that the last years have been painful, and that there are still challenges to be overcome. But we can't let anger divide us.
More than ever, now is the time to work together. It's also the time to reflect on the kind of future we want for our country. There's a lesson for all of us in what happened this month. We don't know when this pandemic is going to finally end, but that doesn't mean we can't start healing as a nation. And it starts with all of us. If you spend a lot of time online, try looking outside your social media bubble every now and then. If you have a cousin who you haven't seen in a while because they're unvaccinated or because they're vaccinated, give them a call. If a political conversation got heated during a recent gathering and a friend or relative left early, pick up the phone. Not to try to convince them, not to argue, but simply to ask how they're doing. Look, in the heat of the moment, we can all get carried away trying to win an argument. But not every single conversation has to be about winning an argument. Sometimes it's more important to just be there for one another. As a country, let's aim for more decency in our public discourse, not less. Let's cherish the democracy that we have, and let's commit ourselves every day to working together to make it even better. Merci.
Merci, Monsieur le Premier Ministre. So, like I said, we will,
Thank you, Prime
have
Minister.
20 minutes of questions, starting with questions in the room. So we have 10 minutes. I would ask you, ministers and the Prime Minister, if you could keep your answers short. That would be greatly appreciated because we have a lot of questions in the room and on Zoom. And for people on Zoom, if you could use the raise hand function to indicate that you have a question, that would be greatly appreciated. And on va commencer avec David Thurton, CBC.
We'll start with David Thurton, CBC.
Prime Minister, do we still need the Emergencies Act? The blockades have been cleared. Parliament Hill has been cleared. Do we still need it?
As I said, the Emergencies Act is not something to undertake lightly, and it's something that needs to be momentary, temporary, and proportional. That's why every single day I'm receiving briefings and we are reflecting on how much longer the Emergencies Act needs to be in place. We don't want to keep it in place a single day longer than necessary. But even though the blockades are lifted across border openings right now, even though things seem to be resolving very well in Ottawa, this state of emergency is not over. There continues to be real concerns about the coming days, but we will continue to evaluate every single day whether or not it is time and we are able to lift this state of emergency. But I will turn to Ministers Mendicino and Blair, who on this question wanted to say a couple of words.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thank you for the question. Look, I think there's no doubt that we have seen significant progress here in Ottawa, and after 3 weeks of torment for local residents, for small businesses, for you folks who've been reporting, and the images have been shocking and at times and deeply concerning. This morning and yesterday, we saw calm, peace, and quiet. And I think that was certainly a sense of relief for all of us. But we know that there are still a number of individuals who are affiliated with the illegal blockades who are in the area. Just this morning, we saw that there's some reports for a potential activity in the area. So we have to remain vigilant. And not only in Ottawa, but at our ports of entry. A couple of days ago, there was an effort to try and block Surrey, an important trade corridor at the Pacific Highway. We continue to watch very closely activities in Windsor, and we're following the advice of our law enforcement. And I would just point out that we've had a number of individuals reach out, including the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, the Canadian Association of Police members, who are the rank and file, who have said to us with a very clear and singular voice that the Emergencies Act is a tool that is continuing to not only address the illegal occupation here in Ottawa, but also being used very effectively to prevent future blockades. Now, I want to echo exactly what the Prime Minister said, which is, I think, a sentiment that we all share across government, and that is we do not want to use the Emergencies Act for a single moment longer than is necessary. And I believe that when you survey the conduct of law enforcement over the last number of days, what you have seen is restraint. I mean, take a look at the way that the police carried themselves throughout the course of dealing with the illegal occupation here in Ottawa. There was a degree of professionalism and focus, despite the fact that there was an emotionally charged atmosphere, despite the many provocations and intimidation, and at times efforts to assault police officers. And that, despite all of that, we saw a minimum use of force. So I think that kind of conduct will continue to carry through the Emergencies Act, but we won't use it for any longer than is necessary.
Ministers, we have 10 minutes only for questions, and we're using it all up on the first one. You want to stay for an extra 10, break.
Yep.
Bill?
I'll take your point, David. I think clearly the police have used and the measures that we brought forward in the Emergency Act appropriately and to significant effect. We're pleased with the progress that's being made. We're monitoring on a daily and even hourly basis the threat environment with our senior officials and with law enforcement, and we are committed to ending this emergency at the earliest opportunity. But clearly, we're not out of the emergency yet, and so we'll continue to monitor that very carefully. I hope that's satisfactory, David.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Laurence Martin de Radio-Canada.
Hello from Radio-Canada. If the act is used in a preventive way, what is the threshold to remove it? Because the truckers could come back in 2 months, 3 months, so does that mean we have to keep it for another 2-3 months? Indeed, this is something that we're thinking about. Of course, at some point, once it's lifted, we'll have to remain vigilant as to what could happen afterwards. But we still feel that now, right at this moment, the situation is still fragile. The state of emergency is still there. We're going to continue keeping an eye on this each day and see when we can lift it. It won't be for right away, but every day we're going to reevaluate, and we hope that we won't keep it for 1 day longer than necessary.
Hi there, it's Annie Bergeron-Oliver for CTV National News. My question is for Minister Freeland, I believe. 2 Conservative MPs say that their constituents who donated small amounts, about $50 or so, have had their bank accounts frozen. I'm wondering if this is a case of a mistaken use of powers granted to banks under the Emergencies Act, or is the government going after any donor, including small donors?
I'll turn to Minister Freeland in a second, but the measures that we put in place are designed and focused on ensuring that people in the current illegal occupations leave. That has been the intent and the focus right now. If there are specific cases that Conservative ministers can bring forward to highlight where that is not the case, we would happily look at them and hope to resolve them. But I'll turn over to Minister Freeland.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. So first of all, just as the Prime Minister said, particularly right now, at a time which is very fraught, it's important for all of us to be very, very careful to get our facts exactly right in each circumstance. And I would urge all of us to take that care in every situation. In terms of the financial measures, the RCMP has given to the financial institutions names of leaders and organizers of the protests and of people whose trucks were part of occupations and blockades. That is the only information, according to the RCMP, that the RCMP has given to financial institutions. I think it's also really important for everyone to be clear, and this speaks to the getting our facts straight point, that these measures applied only as of the 15th of February. That is when financial support of these illegal blockades and occupations began to be sanctioned. And then finally, let me say, for anyone who is concerned that their accounts may have been frozen because of their participation in these illegal blockades and occupation, the way to get your account unfrozen is to stop being part of the blockade and occupation. These measures were put in place to disrupt illegal activity in Canada. And, we were very clear last Monday that we would be following the money, that we would be using financial tools to disrupt illegal blockades and occupations. The focus absolutely has been on leaders and on the vehicles that were such an important part of the illegal blockades and occupations. That has been the only focus of law enforcement. Thank you.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau.
Question, Mr. Trudeau, I'd like to know, are you going to impose the party line for the vote of this night, and what about a vote of confidence? Answer. First of all, I have a hard time imagining that a parliamentarian who votes no to these measures this evening could imagine that it would be something other than showing confidence and trust in the competency of the government. But I have total confidence that the majority of parliamentarians this evening will vote to protect the rule of law and protect Canadians, their communities, and their freedoms.
I can't imagine that anyone who votes no tonight is doing anything other than indicating that they don't trust the government to make incredibly momentous and important decisions at a very difficult time. But like I said, I am confident that the majority of parliamentarians will stand up to support our values, to stand up to support our democracy, and to stand up to support their fellow Canadians. J'ai répondu.
David Akin, Global News. Thank you for taking our questions, and thank you for the kind words about supporting our work. I'd suggest the best way to do that, of course, is take an extended amount of time for questions from journalists. I heard what you said in reply to my friend David Thurton, and I heard the very same similar lines repeated by Minister Mendicino, repeated by Minister Blair. We don't want this to go on for 1 second longer. I really want to press you. Give us a specific power in the Emergencies Act, which is vital right now, that is not present in the provincial emergency orders, in the criminal code, and any other number of statutes that already exist. What specifically is in that act that is so vital right now to protect Canadians?
We saw for a number of days and weeks into the blockades that it was extremely difficult to get tow trucks to come and tow big rigs. One of the specific measures is an ability to compel tow truck drivers to come and do their jobs. When the Emergencies Act was brought in, many tow truck companies said, okay, we'll do it, didn't need to be compelled, but there were some companies that needed to be compelled under the Emergencies Act to remove trucks. And we've seen right now that there are trucks holding in places like Arnprior and Embrun and other places that are have indicated an indication, a desire or an openness to returning to blockades right now. So that is a power we may well need. The power to designate critical infrastructure like border crossings as not just the actual border crossing itself, which of course is protected under current legislation, but the approaches to border crossings, 15 kilometers up the road from Coots, for example, or the municipal approaches to the Windsor crossing, that require police to be able to designate that as areas where people not just occupying, but indicating a desire to go and occupy that intersection can be turned away. Just in the past days, there was a convoy from Fort McMurray destined for Ottawa that was largely turned away at the Manitoba-Ottawa border based on the laws and the powers in the Emergencies Act. Now, this is not something that we want to imagine continuing indefinitely in Canada. We hope to only keep it in place for a number more days. We will reevaluate every single day. But right now, when the situation is still of people pre-positioning, people being out there indicating that they are ready to blockade, to continue their illegal occupations, to disrupt Canadians' lives, we feel that this measure needs to remain in place while this emergency situation is still in place. And I could give other occasions, but I'll turn to another question instead to try and get as many as possible.
Sir Lee Berthiaume, Canadian Press, good to see you. You've said you don't want to keep the Emergencies Act any longer than necessary, but you have also said that you want to make some of the new powers around fundraising platforms, reporting to FinTrack permanent. I'm wondering what other powers you're looking at making permanent, whether other changes after this crisis have passed.
One of the things that is important and right about the use of the Emergencies Act is there are already many mechanisms around review and oversight, whether it's a parliamentary committee, whether it's an inquiry afterwards, whether it's a need for openness and transparency, whether it's even court cases that are coming forward to challenge it. All those are part of the checks and balances that make sure that these actions we took are the right ones, which we know they are. At the same time, there needs to be a reflection about misinformation and disinformation and how Canadians' lives can be disrupted by it. There needs to be a reflection on foreign funding of illegal actions in our country designed to disrupt or destabilize our democracy. There have to be reflections on our ability to keep our borders open and free-flowing and protect critical infrastructure like the seat of our democracy. These are things that will be debated and reflect on in time. We will work with parliamentarians to move forward in a way that is responsible and properly measured to react and proact in terms of what we see potentially coming in the coming years.
Okay, thank you for that. We're going to go on questions on Zoom. On va commencer avec Hélène Buzetti, les coop de l'information.
We'll start with Ms. Buzetti. Yes, hello, my question is for Minister Freeland. Hello, Ms. Freeland. Earlier, you had said that the way to unfreeze your account is to no longer take part in the blockade. However, there are no more blockades. So are we to understand that the funds will be unfrozen soon? And if the vote is negative tonight, does that mean that automatically those counts will be unfrozen? And if I may ask another one, Mayor Watson said that we should sell the impounded vehicles. Would the law allow for that?
OK, merci pour la question.
Thank you for the question.
Je veux commencer en disant que
I will start by saying that it is very important to have accurate data.
Les normes précises
the standards
ne sont pas partagés avec les politiciens.
On seized accounts are not shared with politicians, and that is the way it's supposed to be. Second of all, as I just said, police officers have shared with financial institutions the names of the leaders of the blockades and leaders of the occupation and the names of truckers. That is the focus, that is the target of what the police forces are working on. Now, about what one should do to unfreeze their bank accounts. First of all, it's important to recall that bank accounts can be frozen for a number of reasons, and a number of reasons that have no connection with the occupation or the blockades. And it's important to be sure that the account is not being frozen for any other reason. If a person is certain that the account was frozen because of illegal action, and that there's a connection with the occupation and the blockade, then the person needs to speak with the police, who will then communicate with the financial institutions to unfreeze those accounts. And lastly, as concerns frozen accounts, this was a measure that was taken to end the blockades and the occupation. It is not a retroactive measure. It was a very targeted measure. It was not a permanent measure. We have no intention nor the right to take people's money. This was really a way to end the illegal blockades and occupation. And I can repeat that in English if it's useful, but if not...
No?
No? Okay. Thank you. And as for the truckers, what about selling them? For the trucks, answer. I spoke about the federal powers, and there are also measures and powers that remain with the municipality and the province. Thank you.
Parfait. We're going to go to John Ibbotson, Globe and Mail.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Concerning the situation in Ukraine, if Russia were to recognize the independence of Luhansk and Donetsk and send troops into the region, would that be sufficient to trigger sanctions by Canada? And if it were not sufficient, why would that not be the case?
First of all, we continue to see Russia positioning itself and trying to create excuses or reasons to violate Ukrainian territorial integrity, to violate the sovereignty of Ukraine. And we continue to stand against all such measures. We will fully stand for the entire territorial integrity of Ukraine and do not recognize any attempts to independently recognize or autonomize the separatist-occupied regions of eastern Ukraine. Canada stands with Ukraine. Canada stands with its allies against this aggressive Russian positioning and will respond strongly and firmly with our allies in the case of any territorial violation of Ukraine.
Understood. I suppose what we're asking for, though, is some sense of a threshold. What actions the Russians would need to take before Canada would feel justified, indeed required, to initiate a response?
As our allies, as Americans, as Canada, as European allies have been clear, any violation of Ukraine's current territorial integrity will be seen as a violation by Russia of some founding principles of the UN and of the rule of law as we practice it around the world right now.
Raymond Fillon, TVA.
Question from TVA. Thank you. Hello, Prime Minister. You said that there was a lesson for all in what happened this month. What is the lesson for you? Response. First of all, the Canadians are tired. They are fed up with COVID, with restrictions. They want them to be over. And for the majority of Canadians, they know very well that the way to get through it is to continue being careful and to know that things improve when we trust science. But there are also people who, for all different kinds of reasons, were misinformed or found themselves in difficult personal situations and who are very angry against the institutions, against science, and against their government. And as a society, we must recognize that the way we got through this pandemic, and better than most other countries that are similar to ours, well, it's because people were very much there for one another. And how we'll get through this pandemic and get through this crisis of occupations and blockades is to make sure that we continue being there for each other. And this is what I will always focus on, being there for each other now, and for the people, the citizens of Ottawa who'd like to get back to their daily lives, being there for the workers in Windsor who have seen plants closed down because of the blockade. It's being there for people in the country who don't want to see violence or illegal occupations. We're going to continue being there for each other and try to bring Canadians together and heal as much as well as we can. Do you have any regrets as to the way you managed the situation for the last 3 weeks? Some people have criticized you and said you didn't want to dialogue with them. Response: there are always things that need to be reflected on after any crisis or any measures that are taken. I think that we were very clear at each stage that the way to influence political policy and to change things in a democracy is not through unlawful means, occupations that hurt fellow citizens. It's through political action, going to vote, like Canadians did 6 months ago. And also, if you really want to change things, well, run in the next elections. Encourage Canadians to support you so that you can make change. And that's how a democracy works. We can't just say, oh, well, there's unpopular measures, we're going to go blockade Parliament and make them change their mind. That's not how democracy works. If these people really desire change for the leadership of this country, well, there's a way to do that. It's to run for elections, to get elected, and to get the approval and support of the majority of Canadians. And not just that of those who support you in your immediate circle.
We have time for one last question. We're going to go to Jacques Gallant, Toronto Star.
Hi, good morning. Prime Minister, you mentioned earlier about oversight and you talked about the parliamentary committee. I'm wondering, when will that committee be struck and what exactly will it be able to do? What exactly will its powers be?
Part of the rules around the formation of the Emergencies Act is the striking of a joint parliamentary committee between the House and the Senate to report back on the use of the Emergencies Act after the Emergencies Act had been in place, to talk about how it was used and to report back in a fulsome way. The discussions are ongoing with the various parties on exactly that issue. David, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you, Jacques. It's a wide-ranging set of powers that the committee has to go back and look at. First of all, the declaration, the justifications contained in that declaration, any orders, as well as the implementation of those orders. So, and as well as forward-looking advice for what we might want to do down the road. So that committee has a wide-ranging set of responsibilities, I would say, first, as well as powers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And Prime Minister, I wanted to ask you again this question that you got earlier, but I don't think I heard a response. Is tonight's vote a matter of confidence?
Like I said, I can't imagine anyone voting against this bill as expressing anything other than a deep mistrust in the government's ability to keep Canadians safe at an extraordinarily important time. But like I also said, I am confident this bill is going to pass.
And that is the end of our press conference. Ceci met fin à la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup au Premier ministre, aux ministres qui ont pu rester quelques minutes de plus.
Thank you very much to the Prime Minister and ministers who could stay a few moments longer.
Oh my God. It's complete clown world. Oh, I can't. I can't even. I mean, how much more theater do we have to tolerate? It's crazy. These guys, well, they know that we're stupid. Let's face it. We elected this sucker in there, and they know we're stupid. And I'm sorry. I know it was uncomfortable to watch. I couldn't not broadcast it. So Trutard drops the War Measures Act. And, I mean, let's call it what it is. It's the successor to the War Measures Act, right? What do they call the Emergency Act. No emergency. This is designed for when we're at war. But I think 9/11 happened and we didn't declare a state of emergency. Like, the state broadcasting is obviously on the warpath. They are being paid by Trudeau directly by the government, and they're making no bones about it. The Toronto Star yesterday begged publicly for another $60 million they want because they can't run their business at a profit anymore, and they need the feds to bail them out. And what's up with Freeland? What up, girl? You're spooky, dude. Like, this is Adderall, okay? Somebody said cocaine. I don't know about the cocaine. That's Adderall. You can't stay still. Like, I'm not a big fan of Adderall, but I know that only because I tried it. I thought maybe it would help me focus. No, it's just straight speed, and I think, like, my head didn't jiggle like that. But there's something up with this girl, man. And yes, her husband is an investigative reporter for the New York Times. We had Max Bernier on last Tuesday, had him on for almost an hour. He was pretty frank about a bunch of things, asked him the Davos question, and talked about the media bias. Of course, he's the only one I know of that has a campaign platform that says defund the CBC. So that was a pretty good conversation. Wherever you're watching this, you should be able to find that conversation with Maxime Bernier and myself. You know, and the mass formation psychosis that continues to be propagated throughout the population and what is actually hypnotized, I would say a majority of the population, there's no amount of proof that you can show anyone about masks, about the shot, about, you know, death rates, anything like that. There's no amount of facts that you can show anyone that is hypnotized by mass formation psychosis, MFP, that would dissuade their radical thinking and opinions. It's frustrating because you can hardly have a conversation. You can't have a conversation with these people because they will not listen to reason, and you are a monster for believing what you believe. And your belief is based in facts and often comes with stats that they don't want to acknowledge or be anything part of. Then we see the RCMP, their false flags, planting guns and saying they were found in the trucker convoy. They weren't. Undue arrests and charges, and then they clear everyone from the square, and the party went downtown. And the cops are just screaming, disperse or you will be arrested. Seizing bank accounts now. Man, is this not a case of lost innocence or what? A once peaceful, loving country turns into this dictatorship. Look at the smug smirk as he fields questions from state reporters. I'll help you here with this. Look at dude, what's up? She's not getting enough oxygen. She cannot be healthy. There's no way that this is normal behavior for anyone. And this guy, oh my God, it's just too much, man. Lost innocence, baby. Freedom-loving country once celebrated its great democracy is now being run by a tyrannical dictator who's seizing bank accounts without due process. And talking about regulation of cryptocurrency, are you crazy? But you got tired of taking the truckers' fuel, and a judge said, yeah, you can make them stop the horn honking, but you can't take their fuel, and they actually kept on doing it. Yeah, the judge ordered them to stop honking. They complied, and then they went after their fuel, and the judge was like, whoa, wait a second. I didn't say you could take their fuel. And what was anyone going to do if the truckers didn't obey the law by continuing to blast their horns? I think they were going from 9 in the morning till 11 at night or something like that. Then they fired it up again the other day at 1 o'clock while Viva Frei was broadcasting live, and at 1 o'clock they gave the signal to blast the horns again, and the whole city just went full on horny. Regulating cryptocurrency. Dude, this is why there is a cryptocurrency, to keep your filthy regulations and hands off it. Castro's son adores China. I'll bring you a full show the other day. I just figured I'd jump on after we were listening to these jag-offs. And wherever you're listening to it now, if you want to rewind to the beginning, it's the full press conference. I just jumped on at the end, and I'm kind of replaying it just so you can get an idea who these people are, who these bad actors are, these drama teachers. And politics is Hollywood for the ugly. Yeah, I got the Castro links. I don't have them handy, but he's praised them many times, China. And I'll have that on another show for you. And don't forget, Trudeau was also the one that got down on a knee for Black Lives Matter. But then he calls in the military and the UN goons to break the backs of a peaceful protest. There was no violence till the UN police showed up. It's got a sad Saturday to watch the clearing of the parliament and what those cops were up to. It was pretty gross. Anyway, share it around if you want. I doubt that you will, because this is really tough to watch. But it just gives you a good idea of who's running things. And they're going to vote on this measure tonight in Parliament after Trudeau suspended Parliament Saturday because of the police action that was about to take place. So a fringe minority forces you into hiding, and then you emerge from hiding to drop the War Measures Act on the fringe minority. Like, you can't have it both ways, Trutard. You can't have it both ways. You can't say that they're a harmless fringe minority and then go retreat to your basement to avoid the security risk that goes with such a fringe minority, and then emerge from your bunker, your hideout, your secret location because of security reasons, to drop the War Measures Act on the whole country because you've got a couple parked trucks and a bunch of people congregating at Parliament. Like, is this for real? What up, Perry? I hope you come back again. Make sure you're subbed. The channel does have many political clips. I got a new channel coming up probably this week that is all about my journey to Dominican Republic, starting day one from the airport in Toronto. And I think every week or twice a week I'll drop a little clip on another little step in my journey down here. And you can hear I live at the lobby pretty much where the motor coaches pull up all day. So yeah, a bunch of political clips here. I'm gay for Gavin, so you see some Gavin McInnes clips here and there. The Jim Fannon Show live goes live here on the Trew.Tube channel. Jim Fannon Show does have another smaller channel. It's currently in lockdown because what did I broadcast that got me a strike? Oh, I probably said something didn't work at the end of my broadcasts. You know those things that cover your face and how effective they are at actually stopping the virus? I think I probably said something about that and that got me a strike. So I think I talked around it well enough here. You know what I said about something not working. I'm not working. I'm working. I still have this. I can't believe this. I got a 1-bedroom condo on the beach in like an oceanfront building with cheap fees. It's $125,000 American, and the fees are only $120 a month, and the place is mint. That stuff's all over too. So, welcome aboard, Perry. Yeah. So after Trudeau got off his knees for BLM, he called the military in to squash a peaceful party, basically. And this is the politics of distraction. You don't look at the inflation. Don't look at the price of gas. Don't look at your weak borders. Don't look at your social situation. Don't look at your unemployment rates. Don't look at your deficit and total debt. No. Look at Putin. Look at this far right-wing conspiracy that is foreign funded. Yeah, look at these guys, because this is the threat to democracy. Not shutting down businesses for 2 years, not locking you in your home if you're new here. I've got 2 charges for leaving my house when the Ontario government said I shouldn't. During a stay-at-home order, I left my house, and I have 2 $880 fines to prove it. All politically motivated, we know that. One brought by the region, definitely politically targeted, because I'm a voice, and not a very friendly one sometimes, often critical. And the other one brought by the region in conjunction with the provincial offenses. Look at this smug piece of work. Oh my gosh. You know what? I said I was going to stop with this. Here it is Monday. I took a whole day off social media yesterday. So proud of myself. I didn't post a thing on Twitter or Facebook yesterday. I did come out to YouTube, catch a couple clips, and then I watched, actually, I think I got it recorded. I watched a bit on CBC last night where they were talking about whatever, the Emergency Act or whatever, and strangely, I don't watch CBC that much, but strangely, they seem to be kind of balanced. They had a bunch of people on that were speaking against the War Measures Act being, how we didn't qualify, or how the criteria was not there to pull it out and dust it off. I could only take the one segment, though, and that's all I've watched the CBC, I bet you, in 5 years. They're just horrible. But yeah, this is the political distraction. Look over here, the politics of distraction. No, you notice nobody else is talking about COVID anymore. Nobody's talking about transmission, hospitalization, death rates, get the jab. Nope, nothing. They're just talking about white insurrection. Did you see that CNN equated Joe Rogan's mashup where he said the N-bomb 22 times in a row? In context, speaking about the use of it, never using it in a racist way, but yeah, they equated it to the January 6th insurrection. And that's what Canadian media has been equating this to, is a Canadian insurrection. Political leaders, mostly liberal, have been quoted as saying many times that the people that were in Ottawa wanted to overthrow the government. Oh, is that what you do? You bring big trucks and party? If you want to overthrow the government, don't you bring, like, weapons? Spooky. Super spook. My good Lord. Make sure your hair is fluffed. Wow. That is the look of evil right there. Those are the eyes of evil. Wow. I'm in Dominican Republic, Big Jake. I'm a Canadian citizen. I escaped a week before the vaccine mandate came in. In other words, just before they said you could not fly out of the country without the jab, I left a week before that. I left October 22nd. And then, yeah, it's mostly politics, Big Jake on Twitch. Most of this stuff is politics. Sometimes I do some music interviews. Last week I had Max Bernier on Tuesday. Pretty good interview. So, yeah, make sure you're welcome, brother. Make sure you're following, and you'll get the notifications when I come up. Twitch is pretty good about the notifications. I get good Twitch notifications for the people I'm following. I don't get those that well on YouTube. Mind you, I am shadow banned 3 times and triple canceled, double fired. Yeah, I've been thinking about leaving TikTok too. It's not really doing anything for me. I've got one video that broke 1 million on there, but I don't know. It's such a data mine for the Chinese, and I'm really reconsidering Facebook again because of it's unbelievable. Every time, like, I'm I don't know if you call it shadow banned, but I'm way down in your ranking. Like, it just don't come up like I used to. And every time I get canceled, every time I get put in the penalty box on Facebook, I come back and I've got a 10th reach for months. Or for maybe forever. It seems to go down every time. I do have a little bit of a mentally unstable person in my building here. And because our building is kind of like, I think it's an old Club Med. It's kind of like a U shape and with a courtyard in the middle with a big pool. When he starts yelling at his mother, it just, everything's concrete here. It just reverberates throughout the whole complex, including into the microphone when I'm broadcasting. Anyway, yeah, so I've been here since October 22nd, selling some real estate, and that's, I'm trying to look away from Canada because it's not doing me any good. It's just a distraction. It's not making me any money. I said I wouldn't do this today. So nobody's talking about COVID anymore, and they don't seem to be. Why are they not concerned about the transmission at like a large event during flu season? Oh yeah, because it's nothing going on. There's no transmission. There's no sickness right now. It's a worldwide embarrassment. Canada is actually, these people are making us a worldwide embarrassment. Even China is calling us out for crying out loud. China thinks our crackdown on freedom is a little bit too far. Yeah, it's clown world for sure. All right, so yeah, check out my conversation with Max Bernier. It was a couple videos ago if you're watching this on YouTube. It's 1:39 my time here, and I'm going to get out and get some sunshine. I hope you're doing well. What up, Arthur? Banned from Facebook. Doing my 3rd 30-day jail sentence. Yeah, I just notice every time I get one of those, when I come back, I have no reach at all. Nancy Graham, what up? Perry, what up? Arthur, what up? It's YouTube coming in. 4Ds. 4DD Rover said earlier, this is the most I've ever commented on a live stream. I'm like, I feel your pain, dude. Because, and I think 4DD Rover said it earlier. Yeah, we're being gaslit. Floor score was in. I missed that. Plenty of Canadians think she's the cat's meow. Vote. Spooge. Communist scum, barf. I'm reading YouTube comments here. Yeah, I got out on time, is for sure. And I'm hoping that a bunch of the mandates are going to be dropped and that you'll be able to fly to your own country too. But you know what? I've never wanted to leave my own country. And I'm a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-time candidate in Canada as a political candidate. And I never wanted to leave my country. And actually, when Justin Trudeau came in, I was so glad to get rid of Harper that I gave him room. I was tweeting out, it's a new day. That was an old Twitter account. My first one is long gone by now. I'm at Team Niagara on Twitter now. After at Jim Fannon, my main account, and then my show account at Jim Fannon Show were targeted by Rob Gill and his thugs and taken down for hate speech, basically, I guess. I did say one time I hope that Mario Cuomo fell and bumped his head. That got me banned. Violence. Or is it... I think bumped his head, yeah. I'm like, well, what if I had said I hope he stubs his toe? Would that be all right? I wish a hangnail on Justin Trudeau. That's violent. I hope Krista Freeland has cramps soon. Shit. Hate speech. I hope this guy trips and falls and bumps his nose on the ground and scrapes it and has to cry to his mommy. And his daddy's not around anymore. Fidel's long gone. Anyway, I might be back later this week. I don't have any interviews currently slotted for this week, but I'll come back with the Jim Fannon Show and we'll get into all this stuff. I got bunch of links I want to run back for you. So, you know what you can do. Wash your hands, take off your mask, love your neighbor, hug your neighbor, and peace, love, hug your neighbor, take your mask off, all that kind of shit. I am out.
Against the institutions, against science, and
night now.